Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's your pal NOMZ here, and we are back talking about the most vile piece of shit to come out of Disney Lucasfilm in a long time. A show that's insulting to Star Wars fans on just about every fucking level imaginable. Disney's Obi Wan Kenobi series. Oh, how do I hate thee, let me count the ways.
Hate. Double hate.
Loathe entirely.
The Obi Wan Kenobi series was an absolute disaster. It was a complete disgrace to what Star Wars is and a complete slap in the face to the legacy of George Lucas. Not only did it actively disregard and break canon at almost every turn, but it did so all to contrive a scenario where current year Lucasfilm, aka Punasfilm, could milk a few extra dollars and limited time Disney Plus subscriptions to give us the quote rematch of the century that absolutely no one with their heads correctly screwed on ever fucking asked for, nor canonically ever fucking happened, despite Disnoids creating all these fanfic montages pretending that it actually fucking does. What's possibly most depressing about this whole thing is that this was all done to give us Obi Wan Kenobi versus Darth Vader one last time, a follow-up of sorts to the Battle of Heroes from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. But what we got was one of the worst choreographed and most poorly thought out, not to mention canon-breaking Star Wars duels to date. And it's quite honestly sad to see so many people fawn over this shallow, drivel Frankenstein attempt at fanservice fuckery, like it was the missing link that Star Wars always needed, apparently. I guess if people eat out of the dumpster long enough, the garbage actually starts to taste good.
You're so concerned with squabbling for the scraps from Longshank's table that you've missed your God-given right to something better.
You know, I've used that meme to demonstrate this point many times by now, and I will continue to do so because it's as true now as it was then. Anyway, the purpose of this video is to discuss the quote fan fiction of the century, and the anticlimactic and canon-destroying duel between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and why it's an absolutely terrible sequence, missing all of the elements that makes a Star Wars lightsaber duel iconic that was present in all 6 of the canonical Star Wars movies made by George Lucas. Before we get to that though, I'll need to discuss a few sequences throughout the show that directly lead up to the final duel, which I'll then go through in detail. If you want more on why the Kenobi series sucks, then you can check out the reaction we did on this channel, as well as my video explaining why Reva is the worst Star Wars character to this day. Yes, I said it, and it's true. Say what you want about all these other characters, but at least we didn't have to suffer through 4 pissing hours of them. With the exception of Rey, who's absolutely terrible, but didn't make you want to pull your hair out every time she opened her mouth, despite the fact that she rarely closed the fucking thing, and at the very least, wasn't a walking contradiction with one of the dumbest character motivations I've seen. Anyway, that's a rant for another time. Let's get started with why the fumble of the century sucks balls. Beginning with the first duel, we all know it's terrible, and it's largely due to the very foundations of this whole fucking shit show of a series. Obi-Wan has essentially turned his back on the Force, leaving him a weak, feeble old man. Now, I've already gone into how the Obi-Wan show completely rips this and a number of other concepts off from the video game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, made by Respawn Entertainment, including the main villain Reva, and again, you can find that in the video that I just mentioned. Granted, there's plenty more Star Wars products that this series stole from, that I'll be sure to mention towards the end of this video. But back to Obi-Wan, the reason why they did this to his character is because the Obi Wan Kenobi series had nowhere to fucking go. And they needed to arbitrarily manufacture Obi-Wan a character arc that he never needed. So they started off with Obi-Wan as a weakling so that he has to spend this entire show re-finding himself again when he should already know who the fuck he is.
It's been 10 years. I'm not who I used to be. I can't.
She's my daughter, Obi-Wan.
I told you, I'm not the man you remember.
Well, you're going to have to be.
I can't leave the boy.
This isn't about the boy, and you know it. You've made mistakes. We all did. It's the past. Move on. Be done with it.
That's a good one.
Anyway, round 1, Obi-Wan spends half of the final act of this episode acting like a pussy, delivering cookie-cutter dialogue with Darthy over here.
What have you become?
I am what you made me.
No shit.
Vader then chases him, and the series baits and baits and baits in an attempt to drag out this episode as long as possible, all for a confrontation with absolutely zero tension going in. Spoiler, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader live! But then again, you already knew that because every fucking body did. The two begin their fight, and it's groan-inducingly sloppy, and honestly infuriating to see Obi-Wan relegated to being such a little bitch for the sake of facilitating this dumbass plot. A far cry from what he was and what George Lucas always intended him to be, the wise Jedi Master determined to further his understanding of the Force, to protect and train Luke Skywalker...
Who?
...and help him overcome the Sith. And despite his haunting past and PTSD, he maintained his glib, snarky, charismatic charm that made the character so beloved by all.
He claims to be the property of an Obi Wan Kenobi. Is he a relative of yours? Do you know who he's talking about?
Obi Wan Kenobi. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. Oh, he's not dead. Not yet.
You know him?
Well, of course I know him. He's me. I haven't gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born.
Can't find Obi-Wan! You can't escape him!
Here, he's just a pathetic loser who gave up.
Go away.
Oh well, at least Obi-Wan gets to redeem himself, right?
Goodbye, Darth.
God fucking damn it!
But we'll get to that. Anyway, the fight slogs on, Obi-Wan looks pathetic, he's lost his grace, his finesse, his technique, and his skill, everything that made him the revered Jedi Master and General that he was in the Clone Wars. The fight finally comes to a head when Darth Vader, in an attempt of some poetic revenge, picks Obi-Wan up with the Force like he's nothing and tosses him into a blazing inferno, pressing him into the flames. Now, hilariously, because once again they can't give Obi-Wan any permanent facial scarring, because A New Hope exists, Darth Vader's poetic justice amounts to Obi-Wan getting some easily fixable burns on his shoulder and only his shoulder. He's face first in the fire. The motherfucker should have walked out of there looking like Cain or the Hound. But nope, he's just sitting there burning alive and fuck all happens. You remember Mustafar? Anakin, dismembered, gradually sliding further and further into the volcano pit, until, without even touching the lava, catches fire and lights up like a fucking Christmas tree. You know, because the duel in Revenge of the Sith actually had a purpose and real fucking consequences instead of just a rehash for terrible fan service. So yeah, Vader puts out the flames with the Force, easily, saying that Obi-Wan's pain has just begun. Bond villain, Bond villain, Bond villain, he tells his men to bring Obi-Wan to him, as he lies there helpless and injured and barely burnt, by the way, only for Ilaria Whammons to ex-machina him to safety by shooting an explosive and restarting the blazing inferno that Darth Vader just put out. And Darth Vader just watches a droid walk off with Obi-Wan and does absolutely fucking nothing. Hooray for plot armor and turning Darth Vader into a giant knob. As if he couldn't just crush the droid and retrieve Obi-Wan himself with the fucking Force. Considering he can drag down fucking starships with the Force. Oh, wait. And that brings us to the Reva duel, where Darth Vader storms the Rebel hideout. Seriously, let's just call them the Rebels, shall we? Because that's all Disney knows how to do. Derivative stories of the original trilogy, Empire vs. Rebels, or Resistance, or who the fuck ever, and every fucking time, that's what it fucking turns into. And somehow, someway, people still eat it up. They still eat this shit. They're still eating out of the fucking dumpster. Seriously, when's enough going to be enough, honestly? Anyway, Darth Vader barges into the Rebel hideout, finds an escaping Rebel refugee ship in the middle of its launch sequence, and breaking all manner of continuity at once, he with ease manages to rip the giant spacecraft straight out of the sky and tear it apart instantaneously with the Force. Wow! Did these writers just give zero fucks or what? This would have come in handy during the Battle of Hoth. So Darth Vader is officially broken, rips a starship out of the sky easily, and finishes off the Rebels. Except nope! Disney Lucasfilm pulls the mother of all bait and switches. Somehow, Darth Vader didn't sense, or even see, because neither did we, because it didn't exist, the other giant transport ship in the same fucking hangar. All of a sudden, poof! There it is! Nice fake out, Lucasfilm. But don't worry, Darth Vader can just easily drag down the second starship. Just like he could just as easily redouse the flames with the Force, just like he did before, right? Yes, once again, Disney Lucasfilm, out of sheer stupidity, steroid the fuck out of Darth Vader, making him perform uber-powerful feats of Force strength, before immediately turning him into a flip-flop, Force-flaccid little bitch who can't get it up no more. This reeks of a Darth Vader fanboy playing with an action figure that they're so keen on Vader looking like a badass, and being as nightmarish as possible that they don't think about the repercussions of having him perform these incredible feats. The reason why the hallway scene in Rogue One is beloved by many, I'd like to believe, including myself in fact, I really like that scene. Vader is portrayed as one scary motherfucker, but it's handled maturely and with care. They didn't need to show Vader rip starships out of the sky for him to be intimidating. They just had to show him being a believable version of himself, cutting down a desperate and terrified group of rebel soldiers who were trapped in a hallway with this monster. Also, the fight on Mustafar was meant to have maimed Vader, crippling his abilities.
You will not stop me. Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us.
He's still incredibly strong, no doubt, and one of the strongest beings in the galaxy, but nowhere near capable of reaching his true potential. It's one of the reasons Vader couldn't overthrow the Emperor on his own and needed to recruit an apprentice to help him overthrow Palpatine. Well, I mean, if he can effortlessly tear apart starships with the Force, then I guess every duel after the final Mustafar should have been a no contest, destroying even more of the franchise's iconic continuity. But Vader's ludicrous Force abilities is, amazingly enough, in this endless reservoir of stupidity, not the worst offender of continuity-breaking character abilities in this show, but we'll get to that. Anyway, I guess after depleting his Force energy, supposedly, Vader fights Reva and doesn't instantly crush her with the Force, instead humoring her with a fight, and admittedly it was quite satisfying to watch Vader completely hand Reva her own ass on a platter, especially since the bulk of the audience couldn't fucking stand her. I enjoyed the beatdown, I'm just saying it doesn't make sense, not to mention the choreography was way too flashy, and Disney, being Disney, did what they do best and protect their diversity hire character insert, who they're pushing as hard as possible for the wokies out there, and prevent her from logically and consistently getting cleaved in half by Darth Vader, when there should be absolutely no fucking chance that she should have survived this scenario. They want to make Darth Vader as dangerous and ruthless as possible, but at the end of the day, when it comes to him doing anything actually meaningful, these pussies don't have the balls to pull the trigger on him killing any characters, especially characters they're trying to push for political reasons. Seriously, I can't fucking stand Reva's character, and this is one of the biggest reasons why. But now we come to the final confrontation between Obi Wan and Darth Vader. Whoops, sorry, I had the search filter set to canon only. I meant this fanfiction wannabe bitch-tard fucking confrontation between Obi Wan and Darth Vader that shouldn't even fucking exist, and canonically still doesn't, just for the record. Canonically, Obi Wan is still on Tatooine protecting Luke.
I will take the child and watch over him.
Luke.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!
And Darth Vader is off ruling the galaxy with an iron fist. See what I did there? And he's probably killing one of his subordinates right now for failing him, as his tolerance for failure is practically zero. Anyway, these two fanfiction characters are in a cat and mouse chase in outer space, and Obi-Wan breaks off from the rebel ship to try and lure the Empire forces away so they can escape. But instead of Vader breaking off and pursuing Kenobi to a nearby planet, by himself, or with maybe a small collection of his Inquisitors, or just a squad of stormtroopers, he diverts the entire Star Destroyer away from pursuing the rebels to follow Kenobi to a nearby desolate world. Disney again turning Darth Vader into a giant buffoon. Seriously, it's almost like they can't fucking help themselves. Darth Vader has to be an idiot in this series. Obi-Wan too, for that matter. This entire series was created for the sole purpose of setting up this disaster of the century to cash in on Star Wars prequel nostalgia and boost Disney Plus subscription numbers for another 6 weeks. Before we discuss the final confrontation, let's quickly go over every canonical continuity break this series committed in order to make this happen. Obi-Wan completely gives up on the Force and his mission to contact Qui-Gon Jinn's consciousness in the living Force.
It is I, Qui-Gon Jinn.
That cannot be. Dead you are.
No. I am part of the living Force, Yoda.
Show yourself. Can you?
I cannot. My training was incomplete.
Master Qui-Gon.
I was always here, Obi-Wan. You just were not ready to see.
What the fuck?
as well as his mission to train Luke Skywalker, despite the fact he told Owen Luke needs to be trained because Obi-Wan can hardly even connect to the Force himself anymore, and the fact that he waited till Luke was older than Anakin to discuss potentially training him when he gets to the appropriate age. And this is despite Anakin being 9 years old and too old for the Jedi training, which is a year younger than current year Luke, was the whole problem with Anakin's training, and was the initial start of the domino effect that led to his turn to the dark side.
The boy will not pass the Council's tests, Master. He's too old.
He is to be trained then?
No. He will not be trained.
No.
He is too old.
You don't care if he's okay. You care if he's showing.
It's my responsibility, Owen. When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?
The boy will not pass the Council's tests, Master. He's too old.
Making once again Obi-Wan look like a giant idiot. Obi-Wan leaves Luke Skywalker defenseless on Tatooine. Big fucking yikes. Obi-Wan goes to protect Princess Leia, who never meets him prior to A New Hope, after Padme's funeral.
General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire. I regret that I am unable to present my father's request to you in person, but my ship has fallen under attack, and I'm afraid my mission to bring you to Alderaan has failed.
And Obi-Wan doesn't just meet this character he's not supposed to, but he goes on a giant bloody adventure with her, and then Obi-Wan meets Darth Vader several times before their long-awaited meeting on the Death Star, which according to George Lucas, the last time these characters had ever seen each other prior to that point is when they dueled on a volcano. Now, all of this was disregarded just to get Darth Vader and Obi-Wan back together for another duel? So the duel itself better be good, since the writers sacrificed so much of the franchise's integrity, or whatever integrity it has left, in order to make this happen. So, does that mean the duel is any good?
No!
And here we go, on this nameless, dark, gloomy, misty planet, with all these warped rock formations, we finally get Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. Again. And well, let's get through this as quickly as possible. I'm not going to painstakingly go through every bit of choreography, because I'm not a swords expert, and I don't see any reason to be pedantic about this, but it's important to note that choreography is meant to have both showmanship with a steady degree of practicality to it. And this is true for all of the duels in Star Wars. Let me make that perfectly clear, ranging from Duel of the Fates to the final fight between Luke and Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi. Showmanship and practicality. Choreography is staged. It's rehearsal and timing for what in this case is meant to look like two warriors fighting to the death. Now, if this fight was completely practical, it would be over very quickly now, wouldn't it? Real fights aren't rehearsed after all, but this is made for entertainment, and so it has to provide the illusion of reality whilst taking the time to tell us a story, which is why the lightsaber duels in all the mainline Star Wars movies are held in such high regard. Let me give you two examples. The original fight back in 1977 with Ben Kenobi and Darth Vader on the Death Star. Now, this fight has been criticized for being a little clunky, which I suppose is true to a degree, but it's also forgivable considering this was the very first lightsaber duel in the Star Wars franchise. But it's also choreographed like a traditional on-screen sword fight, and there was very little flashy moves going on, because A, try telling 60-year-old Alec Guinness to fight like this, rest in peace, and B, the story that was being told with this fight was the long-awaited clash between former master and student, and show how the years have taken their toll on Obi-Wan, setting the stage for Luke to take up the mantle of the Jedi after he falls.
I think my uncle knows him. He said he was dead.
Oh, he's not dead. Not yet.
You know him?
Well, of course I know him. He's me, a young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
Late, I'm in for it as it is.
I need your help, Luke. She needs your help. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
Your powers are weak, old man.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
And with the added context of Revenge of the Sith, you can see that the years haven't been kind to Darth Vader either since the duel on Mustafar. As I said previously, he's still the second most powerful being in the universe, but he's nowhere near what he could have been had he realized his potential. That's the story that the original Star Wars lightsaber duel was telling us, with both its purpose in the film as well as its choreography. Now, these writers for the Obi Wan Kenobi series are trying to portray this final confrontation, this rematch of the century, as the spiritual sequel to Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. So it's unfortunate that these writers also entirely missed the point of that duel, and what made the duel on Mustafar so epic, heart-wrenching, intricate, and enthralling. It wasn't just the choreography, which Kenobi failed spectacularly at, which I'll get to. It wasn't the fact that they were fighting on a volcano planet. And it's not just the fact that there's lightsabers involved, or the fact that John Williams, in heavy collaboration with George Lucas, I might add, devised one of the greatest scores of all time.
You saved it just for me.
There's no question in my mind, for George, the single biggest collaborator that he has is John. George always has the idea of what the music is going to do.
You say the focus is on really the emotional content, not on the bombastic of it.
Exactly right.
Music is the complete and utter support system for the way in which he tells his stories. We cannot wait till we get to London. We cannot wait to hear it, because there's never any issue as it's going to work with John. You always know it's going to work, and you know it's going to work beyond anything that you ever expected.
What makes the duel on Mustafar the best in the entire series is fucking everything. All the little details that George Lucas cleverly integrates into it. It's worth pointing out that this duel has been criticized by some for a lack of dialogue to convey a story between the two characters, but the people making this criticism, or saying that the duel was either too long or too boring, failed to understand subtlety, because, like with any mainline Star Wars duel, the duel itself is telling you the story. You're seeing two former friends, two former brothers, former master and student, and fellow war heroes locked in an epic duel for the future of the galaxy. As former master and student, the two have incredibly similar fighting styles and know each other's moves extremely well, which is why the fight flows so well, and you add both the experience of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen under the instruction of Nick Gillard, and you've got all the ingredients to deliver a duel that was incredibly choreographed, with plenty of showmanship and flash, whilst delivering an incredible amount of practicality as well. Not to mention the fight itself is full of these carefully placed details to help tell the story. And back to that little comment I made about subtlety, granted, some of these details aren't so subtle at all, which makes me further question how some people fail to pick up on this stuff. The score by John Williams is called Battle of Heroes, for instance. The setting of Mustafar is a constant reminder and foreshadowing for Anakin's descent into hell.
The climactic battle takes place on a sea of fire, lava actually, on a planet filled with nothing but volcanoes.
Do you actually take us down, in the biblical sense, into hell?
Yes.
The lava.
The lava at the end
is hell.
Yes, it ends in hell.
And there's several other details as well that I'll talk about in a few moments when I discuss the Kenobi finale. But the point of the matter is, the lightsaber duels in the George Lucas canon Star Wars movies always had a purpose to them, a story to tell, a healthy degree of realism to them. In short, they had a reason to exist. I'm sure many of you can see where I'm going with this. Now, to tie all these points back to the Obi Wan Kenobi series, this retcon of the century, let's start with the choreography. Much like the other fights in the Disney Star Wars productions, it is basically all flash and little practicality. Not all of it's bad, understand. Certainly far from the worst Disney has produced in a lightsaber fight. That honor, or in this case dishonor, goes to The Last Jedi throne room scene and The Rise of Skywalker. Seriously, look at this fucking shit. Just look at it. Now, what I find baffling is that whoever's doing the choreography for Kenobi actually did a somewhat decent job replicating Obi-Wan and Anakin's fighting styles in the Attack of the Clones flashback scene, which was one of, if not the only, halfway decent scenes in the entire series. Perhaps that was due to Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen taking the reins, since they're so familiar with those fighting styles, and maybe they had a bit of muscle memory from back in the day. I don't know. But I don't know how we go from seeing that mostly excellent choreographed scene, but ending up with this fucking schlock in the duel that's meant to be the climax of the entire series. Now, granted, Vader has a different fighting style than Anakin after he becomes a cyborg, but still, there's no character to the moves of each warrior in this duel. Vader has an aggressive fighting style, sure, but he's not completely reckless like he's fighting here. And it's for this reason, like I said, there's very little rhyme or reason to his attacks. And sure, the Sith can be reckless and arrogant, but it's more of a momentary weakness that can be exploited. As for Obi-Wan, he's fighting better than his previous duel with Vader, but again, he's lost the grace and elegance of his fighting style. Obi-Wan has a very proper fighting style, since he's a by-the-book traditional Jedi, and this was a very intentional design choice by George Lucas and Nick Gillard from back in the prequel trilogy.
I mean, Jedi, as I've always said before, they've chosen a sword in a time of, laser guns, so they better be damn good with it.
All Jedi don't fight exactly alike. When we started, there was a particular style developed. It's a combination of samurai and Western sword fighting.
Nick Gillard creates a unique fighting style for each of the Jedi, and how it sort of reveals a certain element of their personality.
You have to distinguish between the characters, so you have to read the script a lot of times and understand the character.
A lot of the aggression that I hold in my character is exemplified in my fighting style. Anakin maybe loses control a little bit and some of the darkness emerges, whereas a Jedi normally would have to be much more in control of the situation. Obi-Wan, his fighting style is much more by the book, even though he's obviously very skilled.
He has got extraordinary balance and hand-eye coordination. But yeah, it's a long process, and not just them getting the moves, but them keeping the character.
About the only thing the Kenobi fight scene choreographers got right with this fight is Obi-Wan's signature pose, which admittedly he stole from Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z, and only the most based See You Next Tuesdays out there would know that. But at the end of the day, that's just a shallow bit of fan service really, and it's about the only bit of choreography this fight got right. Anyway, what about the story? What story does this fight tell? Well, aside from one that we didn't need to be told, it doesn't really tell any story except does Obi-Wan still got it? Which was a plot point that this show manufactured to facilitate this fight in the first place, and still manages to tell us this shallow, sad attempt at a story in the dumbest way possible. Thanks to the really terrible setup for this duel, it's a wonder why Vader doesn't just instantly crush Obi-Wan with the Force, since he can rip apart starships now with ease. Anyway, Vader wins the initial skirmish by burying Obi-Wan under a mountain of rocks and rubble, trapping him there, and then Vader for some reason says,
"You have failed, Master."
I'm pretty sure Anakin rid himself of his bonds with Obi-Wan back in Revenge of the Sith, so this line feels very out of place.
This is the end for you, my master.
So Obi-Wan is writhing in agony, struggling to breathe underneath the crushing weight of the rocks, and not to mention the claustrophobia. Ewan McGregor, to his credit, sold it very well. So you're wondering, how exactly is Obi-Wan going to overcome this? Well, actually no. Chances are you're not wondering anything, because what happens next is incredibly predictable and extremely cliche. The writers give Obi-Wan some flashbacks of his brief time spent adventuring with young Leia, and apparently it's his memories of Leia that give Obi-Wan the kick in the pants he needs to lift all the rocks and escape and to stop being a pussy. And it's here that things completely fly off the fucking rails. After Obi-Wan frees himself, he doesn't just re-engage Darth Vader in a lightsaber duel, he completely overwhelms him, and in addition to that, he uses the power of Force steroids to utterly obliterate Darth fucking Vader.
Oh my god, my insides are on fire!
Darth Vader gets overpowered by Obi-Wan Kenobi, like the motherfucker just went Super Saiyan, or at least he may as well have, because that's what it would have taken for this sudden Force erection of his to make any fucking sense at all. Not only that, but the manner of which Obi-Wan overpowers Darth Vader is so insulting to both the character and the franchise's continuity, and is easily the biggest and most blatant middle finger of this show to Star Wars and its fans. Now, the reason why they did this is because they wanted to keep in line with Vader's quote from A New Hope.
"When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master."
The implication being that the last time these two saw each other, Obi-Wan got the best of Vader. Which he did according to George Lucas canon, where Obi-Wan defeated Vader on Mustafar. Unfortunately, the writers of the Obi Wan Kenobi series must have been either high as fuck or dumb as shit, or likely both, because they completely missed the point of the Battle of Heroes and Obi-Wan's character. Remember when I said the final duel in Revenge of the Sith has all these subtle details to it? Well, there's two I deliberately neglected to mention because I was waiting to address this lunacy. Now again, keeping in continuity with Star Wars A New Hope, in Revenge of the Sith, Anakin still very much saw Obi-Wan as his mentor despite the fact that he had surpassed his tutelage and he became a Jedi Knight himself.
Get out of here! There's nothing more you can do. I'm not leaving without you, Master.
However, Revenge of the Sith also went out of its way to show that Anakin was indeed the more powerful Jedi for the entirety of the film's runtime. I mean, the fact that he beat Count Dooku one-on-one was enough to showcase that. When he turned to the dark side and slaughtered the Jedi and the Separatists, he became even more powerful. It was even a part of his dark side training as well, as his means to an end, which is why he did so ruthlessly.
Do what must be done, Lord Vader. Do not hesitate. Show no mercy. Only then will you be strong enough with the dark side.
So when it came time for the duel on Mustafar, Anakin was the more powerful warrior. However, like I said, details. If Anakin was more powerful than Obi-Wan, how was Obi-Wan able to beat him? There's three key details here. Number one, as I already mentioned, Obi-Wan was able to keep up with Anakin because he trained Anakin and knew better how to fight him than anyone. Something I'll even admit the Obi Wan Kenobi series did a decent job of showcasing with the Attack of the Clones flashback sequence. But it's more than just the fact that they're so well acquainted with each other. Which brings me nicely to details 2 and 3 that I neglected to mention earlier. Number 2, Anakin is the clear aggressor in this fight. Having embraced the dark side, he is now fighting like a Sith, and the Sith use anger and aggression to enhance their powers.
The Sith rely on their passion for their strength. They think inwards, only about themselves.
I can feel your anger. Gives you focus. Makes you stronger.
Whereas if you observe Obi-Wan, he is remaining on the defensive, keeping his composure, and using patience to wait for the chance to strike. And he even manages to outwit Anakin a few times throughout the duration of this duel. And finally, detail number 3. In the final moments of the duel, Obi-Wan uses Anakin's weakness against him, provoking Anakin's arrogance into leaving him vulnerable for Obi-Wan to deliver the final blow. The attentive viewer would also recognize the detail that this moment was a direct mirroring of the final moment from Duel of the Fates in Star Wars Episode 1. In fact, Obi-Wan even says,
"Don't try it!"
He's actually referencing the same move that he used to cut Maul down, except Maul, having the high ground back then, was too arrogant to see Obi-Wan's attack coming, and with someone else's lightsaber no less. But in the Battle of Heroes, the roles are reversed and Obi-Wan has the high ground and is patiently waiting for Anakin in his arrogance to carelessly take the bait. Thus, Obi-Wan was the victor on Mustafar, not because he was more powerful, understand, but because he was a true Jedi and used those attributes to outplay his opponent. It was carefully crafted to this minute level of detail. Now, the Obi Wan Kenobi series attempts to do this without breaking continuity, although I have no idea why they'd stop trying to at this point. I mean, what continuity is there left that hasn't been broken? But what is the solution these dumb shit writers came up with so that Obi-Wan would come out of this fight still having bested Darth Vader before their duel on the Death Star in Star Wars A New Hope? Their solution is to just say, fuck it, Obi-Wan now has the power of a god, or in other words, the power of Rey.
Old man, look at what they've done to you.
Look how they massacred my boy.
And just like they did with Vader, they completely break his character and make a mockery of it and of Star Wars, and turn this already awful disappointment of a fan fiction into a complete and utter fucking parody.
But that's really dumb. But he's so cool. But that's so dumb!
Fuck this shit. Anyway, the duel drags on, and of course Obi-Wan can't die, Darth Vader can't die, and Obi-Wan can't lose. And they can't do any lasting damage to each other. Again, seriously, could this fight be any more fucking pointless? Oh, I forgot, some Disnoids out there still consider this encounter to be the missing link. Which, speaking of links, I'm surprised these people have a functioning thalamus in their brain. Not to mention these writers, and speaking of which, their brilliant idea of how to circumvent these canon restrictions is to have Obi-Wan beat Vader by smashing his breathing machine embedded within his suit. And he does so with the pommel of his lightsaber. You know, if this fight wasn't already on rails as fuck, maybe Obi-Wan could have just fucking stabbed him there. Or I don't know, if you're so godlike with the Force now, Obi-Wan, why don't you just crush the machine with the Force, dumbass? Anyway, this leaves Vader weakened, and then Obi-Wan performs this Disney-fied swan-like fucking over-the-top lightsaber dive and manages to cut Darth Vader's head off. No, wait, it's just one half of his mask that got cut off. Well, I suppose that's progress, since earlier in the series we saw Obi-Wan's lightsaber literally bounce off a stormtrooper's armor. But yeah, Obi-Wan delivers a headshot to Darth Vader. He survives because plot, and only half of his mask comes off. Where have I seen that before, I wonder? But hey, it's totally not the same, right? Because that scene was about Ahsoka encountering her long-lost friend and learning that Anakin Skywalker was killed by Darth Vader. God damn it! They just fucking ripped the shit off of Star Wars Rebels, didn't they?
Ahsoka.
Anakin.
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
Then I will avenge his death.
Anakin's gone. I am what remains. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
And my friend is truly dead.
But NOMZ, they totally didn't rip off Star Wars Rebels. What are you doing, bro? No, shut the fuck up. You know they did, because these series writers couldn't create a pancake out of Play-Doh. And so like they did with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, they just steal from another Star Wars media and act like they have a fucking story? But you know what's mind-boggling? People still manage to fucking defend this. In fact, these warped fuckers are actually complimenting the show for its poetry when they show a collage of Vader having his mask taken off. How many of you have heard this little bit of mental gymnastics floating around about how Ahsoka removed the right side of Anakin's mask and Obi-Wan removed the left side of Anakin's mask, but only Luke Skywalker, his son, could remove the whole thing? Fucking what? You know, I think it's rich that some of these same people criticize prequel fans or just fans of George Lucas Star Wars in general for, quote, reading too much into the symbolism and visual metaphors when it comes to his movies, insisting that these fans are attaching meaning where there is none to be found. When, just like the examples I referenced about Mustafar being a descent into hell, as well as the callback to Duel of the Fates, all of these details and poetic meanings were very intentionally put into the movies by George Lucas because he wanted his audience to pull back the layers with each viewing experience. Whereas in the Disney Star Wars products, there's little to no depth whatsoever, and anytime they try to integrate any depth into the story, it's just a hollow callback with little to no meaning, or they'll just rip it off from another part of Star Wars that did it better. Like, this whole idea of Vader getting his mask cut off, as I said, was just blatantly stolen from Star Wars Rebels. But this is a clear-cut example of desperate fans trying to find and attach meaning to whatever they can in order to validate their love for something. Now, with all that being said, I'm hard-pressed not to say that the one moment of dialogue in the scene that actually I thought was excellent, even though it was ripped off from Star Wars Rebels, and was derivative as fuck, was the moment when Vader tells Obi-Wan that he didn't fail Anakin and that Vader killed him. Not to mention that maniacal look in Hayden's eye as he delivered the line, showing just how twisted and corrupted Vader had become by this point.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Hayden only had a few chances to shine in this series, far less than he deserved, and still managed to knock his role completely out of the park. Well done, you mad lad. However, in addition to ripping off Rebels, the second reason why the Obi Wan Kenobi series used this line was their own attempt to justify this Frankenstein fucking series by acting as if it fills in a plot hole that was never fucking there to begin with. And what's most embarrassing is that some fans actually fucking buy it.
A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
From a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
You serious?
The same reason why they included this bullshit at the end of the fight.
Goodbye, Darth.
Only a master of evil, Darth. You can't win, Darth.
Jesus Christ, Obi Wan Kenobi calling him Darth was not a problem that needed fixing. Fact of the matter is, A New Hope was the first script George Lucas wrote before the additional context of Vader's identity from the additional movies. But the fact that George Lucas didn't correct this in the special editions tells me that this isn't a mistake. Darth is a term for the Sith, so Obi-Wan addressing Vader as Darth isn't all that different from a Sith addressing their adversary as Jedi.
Or should I call you Darth Sidious?
Master Yoda, you survived.
Obi-Wan was calling Vader by his Sith title, again with the added context of the additional movies. It's essentially Obi-Wan disrespecting Vader, showing he doesn't acknowledge him for who he was. It's to show that there's nothing left between them as former master and student. And we sure as hell didn't need the Obi-Wan Kenobi shit show to point this out for us. You see, there was actual depth in A New Hope, but in Obi-Wan Kenobi, where is the depth in trying to arbitrarily connect dots that the comprehensive individual can connect on their own? And after Obi-Wan delivers his groan-inducing line,
Goodbye, Darth.
That's it. That is the end of the duel. The quote rematch of the century is over. Obi-Wan overpowers Vader using Force steroids, wrecks his breath machine with his lightsaber pommel, cuts off Vader's mask, and just leaves him there. Okay, again, the writers obviously didn't watch Revenge of the Sith. As a Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi cannot kill a defeated opponent.
I shouldn't.
Do it. He was too dangerous to be kept alive.
Yes, but he was an unarmed prisoner. I shouldn't have done that. It's not the Jedi way.
Obi-Wan dismembered Anakin on Mustafar and watched him slip gradually into a lava pit where he would burn. In fact, Obi-Wan was so heartbroken he couldn't even watch Anakin die, which is why he leaves him there screaming. Something that would turn out to be a mistake since the Emperor would arrive shortly after to save Anakin. But Obi-Wan never meant for Anakin to survive. He already saw how far gone Anakin was, and he knew he needed to be stopped. Which is why he literally left him there for dead. Only Padme believed that there was still a good person in there somewhere.
Obi-Wan. There's good in him. I know there's still.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi series, however, has Vader weakened and battered, but still saber in hand and wanting to fight. It's been 10 years since Mustafar, and Vader has continued terrorizing the galaxy unchecked, committing countless atrocities in his wake, all because Obi-Wan didn't have the heart to confirm the kill. Here, Obi-Wan has the chance to correct that mistake and finish the fight. Since Vader isn't unarmed, at least not yet, and hasn't conceded the duel. Or hell, at this point, I think the Jedi Code could make an exception since the end would firmly justify the means, let's all be honest here. And Obi-Wan has made it pretty clear he's not angry with Anakin. It's more that he's full of pity and regret for what he's become. So I'm pretty sure if Obi-Wan delivered the final blow this time, he wouldn't be turning to the dark side. And that is the difference between what Obi-Wan could have done here and what Luke was doing in Return of the Jedi. But instead, this show just has Obi-Wan leave Darth Vader alive and well on some random planet, free as a bird to do whatever the fuck he wants. And according to George Lucas canon here, Vader surviving Mustafar and being allowed to go on to terrorize the galaxy was indirectly the fault of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Congratulations, Disney Lucasfilm, because according to your own twisted, psychotic fucking canon, and according to the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, Vader and the countless atrocities he commits in the 9 years prior to A New Hope is directly the fault of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Good job.
They just tried to not so cleverly disguise it in this shallow fucking attempt to give these characters a heartfelt moment. The only real difference here between Jake Skywalker and Greg Kenobi, yeah, that's what I'm calling him, shut up, in how they were assassinated as characters is Jake Skywalker was a psychopath. And Greg Kenobi over here is just a fucking idiot. Once again, bravo Kathleen for continuously outdoing yourself. You dumb as fuck. See you next Tuesday. The rematch of the century was nothing but a crime against human literature at the end of the day. One last point I'd like to make about the Obi Wan Kenobi series lacking depth was that the drama itself was basic bitch cookie cutter bullshit from start to finish. And when I say the drama in this series is so cookie cutter, I mean the dialogue had mostly zero finesse or style to it, aside from some very forced callbacks that are trying to be poetic.
And my friend is truly dead.
Then my father is truly dead.
The few exceptions being Obi-Wan discussing his past life with Leia before he was taken to the Jedi Order.
Are you my real father?
I wished I could say I was, but no, I'm not.
Sometimes I try to imagine what he was like.
I know that feeling. As Jedi, we're taken from our families when we're very young. I still have glimpses, flashes really. My mother's shawl, my father's hands. I remember a baby.
A baby?
Yes, I think I had a brother. I really don't remember him. I wished I did. Then I joined the Jedi and I got a new family, just like you.
And again, of course, the Attack of the Clones flashback sequence. And that's if I'm being generous. Especially since that sequence, despite having a little bit of depth, also has zero subtlety whatsoever.
A Jedi's goal is to defend life, not take it.
Mercy doesn't defeat an enemy, Master.
Evil!
But in addition to that, the big moments the series places a heavy amount of emphasis on are littered with plot armor, convenience, and cliches in order to make it work. Like when Obi-Wan overcomes Vader, he just has to think about Leia, and all of a sudden he just becomes uber powerful and overcomes his adversary in the stupidest way possible, completely breaking the character in the process. Later on, Obi-Wan finally unmasks Vader, and he's just like, sorry bro, my bad? Really? You're not going to have a discussion of some kind? Try to have an intelligent conversation? Or hell, something instead of just, sorry evil one that I created? Oh, you're still evil. Okay, I'm going to leave now and continue letting you be evil. That's the sum of what this entire shit show of a series was for. That was the payoff, and it opens up even more plot holes.
Now you gotta promise me you're not gonna kill anyone, right? Just put up your hand and say, I swear I won't kill anyone.
I swear I will not kill anyone.
But in short, the point I'm trying to make here, again, is there's no depth going on in this Obi Wan Kenobi series. None whatsoever, so stop trying to look for it. It has a list of boxes to tick, and it goes about crossing them off the list in the most effortless way possible. The Obi Wan Kenobi series should have never been made. Never should have existed. Hell, canonically, it still doesn't. It was simply a shallow attempt to try and boost Disney Plus subscriptions by capitalizing on the explosion of Star Wars prequel popularity on the internet in recent years. Granted, this popularity always existed, just less so online, and Disney had no trouble giving this fanbase the middle finger when it decided to copy and paste Star Wars A New Hope back in 2015. Look, I'm sure most people realize how shitty this Obi Wan Kenobi fanfiction really is. You don't need me to tell you. But for those of you still clinging to it by any means of mental gymnastics possible to justify its existence and excuse its countless continuity breaks, if you want the rematch of the century, just go watch SC38 Reimagined by Fix It in Post. They gave us the real rematch of the century by simply building on canon and not destroying it. Not to mention, while we're talking about Lucasfilm ripping off other media, there was a couple of times throughout the Kenobi Final Duel where Disney Lucasfilm clearly ripped off that other fanfiction. Seriously, just when you think these fuckers have stooped as low as they can, they're ripping off Star Wars fans now as well? Or hell, maybe they weren't. Maybe I'm just seeing things, but I've watched the Fix It in Post, SC38 Reimagined countless times, and when I saw the Obi Wan Kenobi series use that move, I was like, wait a minute. Like, that was a clear eyebrow raiser for me, but who knows. I wouldn't put Disney Lucasfilm past it at this point, is what I'm saying. Anyway, to wrap this video up, fuck you, Kathleen Kennedy and Disney Lucasfilm. God bless Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen for doing their damnedest to give us something that measured up to George Lucas's legacy, and absolutely salute Fix It in Post for giving us the rematch of the century that many wanted from the Obi Wan Kenobi series, even though it never had a chance of delivering. Seriously, go check out SC38 Reimagined if you haven't already. It completely shits all over anything Disney has put out since Rogue One and Clone Wars Season 7. But yeah, back on point, the rematch of the century was in fact the retcon of the century, and was worse than I ever could have predicted back when it was first announced. And now I dub it Duel of the Hates because I hate just everything about it. If you like it, good for you, but at this point I'd imagine you'll like just about everything. And I'd suggest if you really loved Star Wars, you'll do some actual research about George Lucas and the intent behind his original movies and their vision for you to see just how fucking insulting and awful the Obi Wan Kenobi series truly is. It's an abomination, a disaster, and it deserves to burn until it ceases to be a memory. Fuck this show. I hope the rapture comes before there's a season 2. Anyway guys, that brings us to the end of the video. Well, almost. I'm just going to give you my standard outro and leave you all with a little epilogue of sorts, which I hope you enjoy. In the meanwhile, feel free to leave your thoughts on Duel of the Hates as well as the entire Obi Wan Kenobi series in the comments section below. Thank you. First of all, a huge shout out and thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and YouTube members for all of their contributions to the channel. Thanks guys, I appreciate you. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, you can find a link to Patreon in the description, or if you'd like to become a YouTube member, you can just hit the join button below. Secondly, if you're looking for more Star Wars content on my channel, you don't have to look far. Take your pick, and I'm sure you'll find something to your liking, especially if you're a George Lucas fan. And in addition to that, there's plenty of Star Wars content I still want to make in the future, so keep an eye on those notifications. In which case, if you haven't already, be sure to click that bell, because YouTube is a collective of incompetent arse clowns, and speaking of which, be sure to follow my other video platforms, those being BitChute and Odyssey. 2 excellent platforms which I can back up and display my videos without any bullshit censoring, or copyright cuckery, like my Top Gun Maverick video, which isn't viewable on YouTube, at least for the moment, but you'll have no problem viewing it on those other platforms. There's also a whole bunch of other movie reviews you may be interested in on this very channel, if you do so feel inclined to check them out. Also, you can feel free to check out my channel's Discord server if you want to chat to my community about Star Wars, Marvel, video games, or pop culture in general, and plenty of other topics as well. I've left a link in the description below, check it out at your leisure, and who knows, maybe you'll make some friends along the way. Another special thank you to Coolman229 for helping me out with the audio editing of this video. I've left a link to his channel below. Check him out, he makes great content, including an awesome video on, you guessed it, Obi Wan Kenobi. If you thought I was harsh, well, I don't call him the hate man for no reason, so have fun with that. And finally, here's one last thank you for staying till the end of the video. You are a legend, and I'll see you next time. Enjoy this little epilogue. Yeah, I have no idea how they're going to justify her gigantic hate boner for Kenobi, but it's going to be amusing when they reveal it.
It's going to be something dumb like, oh, when we were at the Jedi Temple, you weren't there to save us, so
You forgot to lock the door, Kenobi.
Yeah.
Why would I ever trust you?
Because we want the same thing.
Do we, Obi-Wan? Do you really want Anakin dead? Where were you while he was killing my friends? He was your Padawan. Why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you save us?
Jordan fades back, swoosh, and that's the game!
You left the stove on in the Jedi Temple before you left for Utapau. Do you know how many children got mildly unwell because they breathed in toxic fumes?
Yeah. You didn't reset the security protocols. Something like that. It's gonna be stupid.
You didn't leave the weekly muffins in the break room.
You took the last escape ship.
It was your day for muffins, Kenobi. You forgot. She hates him over muffins.
God, I'm super hyped to see and to hear what the reason actually is now.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's play so we can see this.
Your day for muffins, kid. I'm sorry. That was really good.
She needs to be screaming it from a building. It was your turn for muffins, Kenobi. It was your turn.
Oh God. I don't know why. I just picture Obi-Wan with like a chef's hat and an apron.
Yeah. We have a flashback of him cooking muffins right before he went to Utapau, like right before he met with like Anakin and left, and he accidentally knocks the muffins over as he's leaving, and he doesn't realize it, and then therefore all the younglings didn't get their muffins.
Kenobi the Muffin Master.
The Muffin Master, who lives on Coruscant.
Master of Muffins. You know, there's this video on YouTube. It's like Master of Trolling, Master of Muffins.
Yeah, but the final episode, it has Obi-Wan giving Reba a muffin to make up for the emotional damage she went through being tormented as an Inquisitor, and she forgives him.
I know you liked blueberries on yours.
Yeah.
That was your favorite, right?
How did we get on a tangent about muffins being the major point of the
Sorry.
show?
Oh, God. I'm losing my mind here, folks. Okay, let's resettle, shall we?
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
We then...
Sorry, audience. Sorry about that. We just kind of got carried away.